I have here two versions of the new rolling dumbbell cart from Eisenlink. These carts have a universal design that's intended to be compatible with virtually every adjustable dumbbell on the market, including the Rep x Pepin dumbbells, as you can see here. They also have some specific features that make them particularly well suited for use with Eisenlink's own dumbbells, or even with similar designs like Ironmasters. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I think of these carts. I'm going to go over the differences between the two, compare them with other options on the market, and ultimately I'll let you know who I think they're a good option for and who probably is going to want to pass on these. Now, to be clear, Eisenlink did send me these carts and these dumbbells here for free. And they gave me an affiliate link that I'm going to put in the description. If you're interested and you want to support the channel, you can click on that. But they didn't ask me to say or not say anything in particular. They just asked me to do a video and give my thoughts. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my honest take on these carts, how they compare with the competition, and I do have some fairly significant critiques that I'll get to as well. Just to give you the backstory here, I was first contacted by Eisenlink at the end of March when they were still working on this design. They actually saw the video I made about the DIY cart I built for the Reppins, and they said that they took some inspiration from it and asked if I could measure the hole spacing on the cradles for them so they could make the trays on these carts compatible with the Reppin trays. They also offered to send me one of the carts when they were ready so that I could do a review on it. So I said, okay, I sent them the measurements and they sent me a few more updates over the following months. And then in September, I actually received in the mail not one, but two different carts, which I didn't even realize there was going to be two versions until they arrived on my doorstep, basically. So these two carts are nearly identical, except for the height. As you can see, there's a short version and a tall version, and both of them have this universal tray design, which is intended to work with basically any adjustable dumbbell, whether it has a cradle or not. There's a bunch of different holes that line up with the cradles from different models so that you can bolt the cradles directly down to the tray. However, if none of the holes match the pattern on your dumbbell cradles, they also include a set of straps, and you can use those to secure the cradles down through these slots, and that will hold the cradles in place. And finally, if you have dumbbells that don't use a cradle, such as Powerblocks, Ironmasters, or these Eisenlinks, there's this non-slip mat that you just place down on the tray and then set the dumbbells on top of that. Even the side plates here that go around the outside of the tray are removable just with a couple screws. For instance, if you have a dumbbell with a cradle that's slightly too wide to fit within those, you can take those off and you'll still be able to hook it down with the strap. Now, I would really love to leave out this next part because it makes me look like a complete dumbass. But I want to be transparent and not mislead anyone about the compatibility of these carts with the Reppin cradles. When I got the carts assembled and I went to bolt the cradles on, the holes did not line up. The width was correct, but the length was off. Unfortunately, when I went back and I looked through the conversation in my Instagram messages, I realized that it was entirely my fault. Despite my best efforts to be very precise when I measured the hole spacing and sent it to them, the number that I gave them was off by an inch. So somehow I'd either messed up taking the measurement or I wrote it down wrong, whatever. But either way, I felt really terrible and I apologized profusely to them in the messages. But they had a very gracious response. They assured me that they would be able to correct the hole spacing on their second production run. And in the meantime, everything should still work using the straps to hold the cradles in place. And then they said, just go ahead and do the review that way and, show how the straps work, etc. I did try that, but to be honest, I don't even think the straps are necessary, at least for the Reppin dumbbells. The cradle is fairly heavy, and when it's just placed on the mat, it's not really in danger of falling off the tray. So you could realistically, I think, get by just fine using them like that. They might shift around a bit when you re-rack the dumbbells, but I don't think it's a huge problem. I guess the strap provides a little extra measure of security, but just due to the size and shape of the Reppin cradle, it will still be able to shift around and won't be held perfectly still by the straps. I think the straps are probably more important for dumbbells that have a lightweight plastic cradle that could possibly lift up when you unrack the dumbbell, or it could potentially get knocked off of the tray easily if you're not careful. In those cases, I think the straps are probably more important to hold everything in place. However, the good news is that eventually I realized that I could still bolt down the cradle. I just could only use 2 of the 4 holes. So I tried that and it actually works great. It holds the cradle very securely. I used 3/8 inch bolts with a thread length of 1.25 inches, 2 standard washers, 1 lock washer, and tightened it down, and it does not move. Like, even just with the 2 screws, there's like no movement, and I think it would be perfectly fine just like that for as long as you want to use it. And just to FYI, it does need to be a 3/8 inch bolt because a 10mm bolt will not fit through the hole on the cradle of the Reppins. It's just slightly too big, even though those sizes are, very close together. So to be clear, as of November 2025, I would assume that if you order one of these carts, all 4 holes are not going to line up with the Reppin cradles. But you can still use either the 2 rear holes or the 2 front holes, and they'll still do the job really well. The cradles won't be centered front to back on the tray, but it's not particularly obvious. Like, you'd have to come over here and look from the top to even notice that. And I don't know, it doesn't bother me, to be honest. I think it would be fine like this. Most people wouldn't care. In the future, like they said, when they hit the second production run, they'll get the hole spacing perfect, and then it'll bolt down with all 4 bolts, and it'll be perfectly centered. And I'll try to stay updated on that, and when it happens, change the description of this video to confirm, once I know that that's the case, that the new cart is shipping with the updated hole pattern. All right, let's talk about the dimensions here. Both versions are about 38.5 inches wide at the back of the tray and 29 inches wide at the front. And if you measure from the base, those numbers are a little bit tighter because the trays stick out a little bit past the base of the cart. Measuring from the base, those measurements are 31.75 in the back and 21 inches in the front. The depth from front to back is about 24 inches, and the space between the trays tapers from 20.25 inches at the back to 10.25 at the front. And the measurement, like right in the dead center, is about 15.25 inches wide. And each tray itself is 9.25 inches by 21.5 inches long. The big difference is in the height, with the short version being 17.5 inches high and the tall version being 25 inches high. Not counting these side plates that form a lip around the edge. And it's also with the trays in this flat position, parallel to the floor. The trays can also be installed at an angle or tilted, if that's your preference. But honestly, I haven't tried that because adjusting the Eisenlink dumbbells would be more difficult if they're on an inclined surface. So that doesn't really make sense. And also, Rep says not to use these on an inclined surface. I think it can lead just to more issues with the plates sticking as you rack and unrack the weights. So I've just left everything flat, but just so you know, they can be inclined if you like that little bit higher angle. I think that might be a little bit better for Powerblocks. I think all the Powerblock stands are angled a little bit, and I think it helps with just kind of like gives you an easy way to like guide the weights in and get them in position as you're re-racking, because they don't have the fine grooves and dovetail that the Reppin dumbbells do. It's not as precise an operation re-racking the Powerblocks. So it is an option. It might work well for Powerblocks or some other types of dumbbells. Now, if you watched my previous video about my DIY cart, you probably remember that height of the cart is a huge thing for me. And I want to be able to walk in, bend my knees, grab the dumbbells, stand up with my arms straight, and walk out easily without worrying about whether the dumbbells are going to clear the cradles or the remaining plates that are left in the cradles. So that is why I prefer a shorter cart. And for me, I'm 5'11", but I do have pretty long arms. And I also left myself a healthy margin of error when designing my cart. And I ended up with a height of 17.5, which is also what Eisenlink decided to use for this short cart. So of course for me, this is the perfect height, just like the one that I built myself. But I think it should also work well for a pretty wide swath of people, unless you're very short, in which case you may still have to bend your arms a bit. But at that point, there aren't any shorter options available anyway, unless you get something custom made or, you know, DIY your own. So I think it was a good choice to make this cart the height that they did. I think it'll work well for a lot of people, and it's not going to have the problem of being too tall where you have to like shrug the weight up and like bend your arms to get it in and out without banging into the plates. Now, if you happen to be extremely tall, then you may potentially want to get 25-inch tall cart, even for use with Reppins or other cradle-style dumbbells. But I would just strongly recommend take your dumbbells, set them on something, measure it, make sure like set up whatever you have to do to rig up a 25-inch high surface. Do that, put your dumbbells on it, and then do some testing to make sure you have enough clearance. Really though, the tall cart is more oriented towards use with the Eisenlink adjustable dumbbells, which is why they ended up sending me a set of those as well, so that I could see how it all works together as a system. Since there's no cradle to clear, the surface of the tray can be taller, and it's actually better that way because it would get uncomfortable, you know, stooping down to adjust the dumbbells if the trays were very low. For me, I can still pick up the dumbbells and walk out with my arms straight without worrying about anything making contact. And if you're a little bit shorter, you could always take the edge off of the tray to give you a little bit extra clearance, about 3/4 of an inch or so. Again, if you're shorter, this cart might be a little tall, but it's probably still a decent compromise since you're going to spend more time, you know, bent over adjusting the dumbbells like this than you would with something like the Reppins, Nuobells, etc. You know, if you're going to be bent over like this, making all the adjustments, it just ends up being less comfortable than when it's up here closer where you can reach it without bending over too much. But if you are really short, then you might want to go with the short cart, even if you are using it with Eisenlinks or Ironmasters or something like that. But, you know, that's going to be individual case by case. Like, you can judge for yourself what's a comfortable height for you. Now, both carts also come with these pegs here that can be used for storing additional plates. Although the tall cart does come with 4 of them, and the short cart only comes with 2. So on the tall cart, you have 2 on each side. The short cart, you only have 1 on each side. And they can be installed in various ways, although it probably makes sense just to do it like this, coming out to the side. That's how they show it in their promotional marketing material. And this does add a little extra width to the cart. It sticks out past the side of the tray a few inches there, but the overall width is still just about the same. It's about 39 inches from one peg to the other peg, you know, and it's 38.5 inches from the corners of the trays in the back. So looking at the cart, you know, this way, it doesn't actually add a lot of width if you're picturing it as like a rectangle, but it does stick out from the side here. Hopefully that made sense. And the intended way of hanging these on the weight pegs is to put them through this finger hole on the top of the Eisenlink plates. So that would be like that. And that works fine. But I found that just hanging them on this slot, actually, they balance pretty well. Better than I thought they would. And I think that would probably be how I do it, because it's just a little easier to hang them from the slot like that. And you can take them on and off, however many you need. Tighten up the dumbbell. and there you go. If you want to make another weight adjustment, loosen it up, take some plates off. You can keep them separated by each side if you want to make sure that, you know, you have the same. If you want to easily be able to just grab, like, I know this many plates goes back on this side, the bottom peg, put all of those plates back on this side to make it a little simpler. So it's nice having 2 pegs there because of that. I did find that the plates balance pretty well just hanging from the slot like that, but you do need to be a little more careful once you start moving the cart around because they can slide a little bit on the peg. But overall, they're pretty secure there as long as you're not making any drastic movements. So generally, the idea, as you can see, is that you can basically just adjust the weight here by taking the plates on and off those pegs and putting them on the dumbbell. And then once you have the weight dialed in, everything's tightened down, then you're in a great position to just grab the dumbbells, lift off, and get to work doing your set. And then after you're done, just put them down, rest, wait for your next set. If you need to change the weight, if you're doing like a drop set or superset or something like that with a different exercise, then, you know, you can just make the changes you need, tighten them down, get back to work. You get the idea. Overall, I think it's a great setup if you're using these Eisenlink dumbbells. And I also think it would work equally well for Ironmasters. You know, this is based on the original Ironmaster design, which the patent expired, and these other companies started to duplicate it and improve upon it as well. But the Ironmasters work basically the same way. They have square plates. You have screws that go in and out. You take the plates on and off, and you need somewhere to put those plates. And this would work great because this weight peg, I don't know exactly the diameter. I didn't actually measure that, but it's definitely smaller than 1 inch, and 1 inch is the whole size on the Ironmaster plates. So this would work great with Ironmasters as well. Now, the one caveat, if you have Ironmasters, is if you have the add-on set that goes all the way up to 165 pounds, they're going to be a couple of inches longer than what these trays are at those highest weights. So you would have to move them off the cart to assemble the heaviest weights of 160 pounds and, you know, 150 probably, whatever, however that works out, because the 165 Ironmasters fully loaded are 23.5 inches long. And like I said, this tray is 21.5 inches. So those last few plates are going to be hanging off of here. You could still use it to like set up and move around and stuff, but once you start changing plates, those plates on the end are going to fall off because they don't have anything underneath them. So, but if you have the 120s, even if you have the 165s, but you're not actually putting that much weight on it, you know, say you're only going up to whatever, 130, 140, whatever the limit is of how many plates you can fit on there, it'll still work fine. Now, when it comes to the Reppin adder weights, which have recently been updated with these nice knurled pop pins, thanks to Rep for that. Didn't have to buy them or anything. They just sent them out. When it comes to those, you can hang them on these pegs in the same way, but they don't balance quite as well. So I find if you're going to do that, you have to be a little more cautious as far as how you put them on. You have to kind of like be a little careful and make sure they're not like spinning and sliding around when you let go of them so that they'll balance well. I mean, obviously it's not a perfect option designed for those plates, but it will work if you just need somewhere to put them when you're not using them. Once you start moving the cart around, again, they're like a little more likely to wiggle and possibly slide off. But if you keep an eye on them, I think it's not a huge deal. They're probably gonna be fine. Just like look at them every now and then, make sure they're not like tilted and like about to tip over. Now, one simple thing you can do is just put some friction tape on that weight peg, and that would go a long way to preventing the adder weights from like slowly rotating and getting to the point where they're going to fall off. But honestly, for using with the Reppins, I would probably just remove the pegs to make the cart a little more compact, and then come up with some other solution for storing the adder weights. That's just me personally. Now, the tall cart also comes with these inserts for storing the Eisenlink locking screws. They fit into these holes on the front cross member. And the idea is that they will prevent metal-to-metal contact if you're storing the locking screw down here. Now, these are just 3D printed pieces, and honestly, they're not that great. They just sit loosely, and they very easily get pulled out of position when removing the screws. I think they just need to add some kind of tabs on the bottom. So like if there was little tabs like that would catch sticking out here on the bottom of this, and then you put it through the hole and those kind of pop out and catch so it can't pull out easily and just click into position. I think that would be a big improvement. And, you know, being that these are 3D printed, it doesn't seem like that would be a difficult modification to make. But then again, I'm not a 3D printer, so maybe I'm wrong about that. And this is especially true if you have the longer screws that Eisenlink makes for building the heavier dumbbell weights, because, see, with the longer screws, there's not enough space for them to fit this way. They would run into the floor. So you actually have to use them like this if you're going to store them down there. And if you do have the longer screws, that's where this storage becomes a lot more important, because you do have to put those other 4 screws somewhere when you're not using them and you're using lighter weights with the regular screws. So you have to put them sideways like this, but then it really is very easy for that to pull out with the screw and not stay in place. So if you get the cart and you're having these issues, what I would do is probably just tape them in place, or, you know, put a drop of super glue down there to hold them in place. Something like that, just so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But hopefully they can update the design here so that these stay in place better. All right, now that we've gone over the basic size, dimensions, functionality of the carts, let's get into the details. Each cart was shipped in a single box, and as I've come to expect with FedEx shipments of gym equipment, there was some damage visible on the outside. Nothing major, but I saw some damaged areas on the edges of the box. When I unpackaged the parts, there were some scratches and scuffs from the pieces banging into each other during the shipment. And again, this is pretty standard for imported gym equipment, unfortunately. So I wasn't really surprised by any means. And, you know, it could all be classified as minor cosmetic damage. But at the same time, it would still be great if the packaging could be improved to avoid this happening. But I also understand it would probably drive the price up. To do that, for more budget-oriented equipment like this, I tend to not get too worked up about that, even though, of course, we would all like everything to arrive in pristine condition. When you're buying a lower-priced piece of equipment, it kind of just comes with the territory, unfortunately. The instructions were easy to follow. The assembly was pretty straightforward. Maybe took like half an hour for each cart, if that. And when I say straightforward, except for the 3D printed pieces that are like listed as screw protectors for these screws here. Those weren't mentioned in the instructions at all. And so at first I wasn't even sure what they were, but I went on the Amazon listing where they sell these, and in the pictures there, in the product pictures, those are shown, and it lists them as screw protectors. And that's how I kind of figured out that that's how you're supposed to use them, because I wasn't really sure what they did. I thought they were something to go with the weight pegs, but they don't fit in these holes. So I thought there was some error with them, but eventually I figured out the purpose, because these holes down here that hold the protectors are actually larger than these 1-inch holes over here. Those are a little bit bigger. I didn't actually measure them, but they're slightly larger. They're not 1 inch. Now, regarding the build quality of these carts, this is the key thing, right, that you want to know. I will say up front that although there is a surface resemblance in design, these carts are not on the same level as the Black Widow dumbbell cart for 1/3 of the price, as nice as that would be. The Black Widow cart is constructed out of 3x3 11 gauge steel. These carts are 2x2, and the metal is significantly thinner. I popped one of the end caps off, which that's another difference. The Black Widow end caps are actually welded on metal. They don't have plastic end caps like this. So I popped off one of the end caps and I checked the thickness with calipers, and it measured about 0.076 inches. I looked that up on a thickness chart for steel tubing, and according to the chart I found, it said that was roughly about 15 gauge. It was in between the two values that it gave for 14 and 16. The tray itself is much thicker. Right here, it's about 0.156 inches thick, which, according to the charts I looked up, that's somewhere between 8 gauge or 9 gauge, somewhere in there. So in case anyone was thinking that the tray itself is 15 gauge and worrying about it getting dented or anything like that, it's a lot thicker. It's definitely not as bomb-proof as the Black Widow cart, but Eisenlink does claim a weight capacity of 440 pounds for each of these. And I admit that sounded pretty high to me, so I decided to test it. I currently weigh around 216 in the morning, so I'm realistically probably around 220 right now as I'm filming this after several meals and, wearing my shoes, drinking fluids all day long. Now the Reppins weigh 260 pounds total, including the cradle. So if you add that to my body weight, that comes out to 480 pounds, which is actually 40 pounds over the stated weight limit. But as you can see here, I can still come over here and actually do dips on this cart and partial dips because it's the short cart, but doesn't seem to be an issue. Even on the tall cart, this isn't quite as much weight. This is only 380 pounds, but still moving dynamically, not even how this is designed to be used at all, but it still holds up really well to the challenge. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this regularly for years on end, but realistically, I don't see much reason to worry about the long-term durability just using adjustable dumbbells as they're intended, just to hold the weight, set them down, pick them up, not putting a bunch of dynamic strain at weird angles like I just did there. Now, there is one issue that I had that I really do need to point out in terms of build quality. Even with all of these bolts torqued down as much as I could without getting to the point where I was over torquing them and, bending the tubing, there is still some play in these uprights. I don't notice them like wobbling around when I'm moving the cart or when I'm lifting the dumbbells on and off. However, they can tilt one way or the other if you put pressure on the ends. So like this one will tilt kind of forward and back if you try to do that. And this one also. And on the short cart, they will also do the same, but on the short cart, I would say it's less prone to that because it's just a shorter lever. It's easier to sort of like lean on the taller one and accidentally like make it tilt. I don't think it's a safety concern. I think the bolts are strong enough to hold everything together, even if there's some play in the parts, but it's definitely annoying. And I'm assuming it's just because of loose tolerances in the hole pattern on those gusset plates. And in the uprights themselves, just the way it all fits together, there's too much slop in those connections. So hopefully that's something that they can tighten up in the future or find some way to prevent that movement from happening. Again, in use, it's not really that noticeable, but if you go looking for like, oh, how sturdy is this thing, you'll notice that it has that bit of play in the angle of the uprights. I might try putting some friction tape between the metal surfaces of the upright and the gusset plate. That might help prevent those pieces from sliding against each other, because it's just sort of this slick powder coating. So it's kind of slippery. So putting some friction tape in there might help prevent that from moving without, deliberately applying a lot more pressure to it. But I just wanted to make sure you guys know about that and not try to conceal that as one of the aspects of these carts. When it comes to the casters, they work well. The cart rolls easily enough on these stall mats. The casters that I used on my DIY cart are a little bit larger diameter, so that does roll a little bit smoother on here, but if I didn't have them side by side to compare, I wouldn't really think anything of it. Like, these ones work just fine. I don't think that really there's any problems with them that I can see. And each of the 4 casters have a lock on them as well, so that you can secure the cart in place if you want to. In practice though, I found that I hardly ever use the locks either on my DIY stand or on these ones, because generally they aren't really going to move much at all unless you're deliberately pushing them around. Of course, your experience may be different if you're in a garage with a slanted floor. So in that case, it's definitely good that they included the locks on all the casters, because in that circumstance, you definitely want to lock it down so it doesn't go sailing across your garage and smash into the wall. So the question is, would I recommend buying one of these carts? And if so, which one? Well, as usual, it depends, because I'm not going to make a blanket statement about how every person on the internet should spend their money. Obviously, budget is a factor, but even more so, I think it depends on which dumbbells you have. So let's start first of all with the Eisenlinks. If you have these Eisenlink dumbbells, I think getting this tall cart is a no-brainer completely. Definitely get it. It has 4 things that I think are key. It has a large, flat surface to comfortably make weight changes on. It has easily accessible built-in storage for the plates that you're not currently using. So you can load and unload plates from the dumbbell easily without moving and going to get the plates or bending down, picking them up off the floor. They're right here, easy to reach, on and off. It has wheels, so you can roll it around to wherever you're doing your lifts. If you watch my other video about the cart that I made, you'll know that that's a huge reason that I think a rolling dumbbell cart is awesome, because I'll just roll it right up in front of my bench. I can do my warm-ups really quickly. Obviously, it's quicker with faster adjusting dumbbells, but even with these, it's going to be faster to do your adjustments if the cart is right in front of where you're benching. You can just set them down, make the changes, do your next warm-up, set them down, do your next warm-up, etc. The 4th factor that this has is the walk-in design, right? So you can comfortably lift the weight up without having to heave it up from an awkward position where you're leaning forward and your feet are behind the edge of the surface that the dumbbells are sitting on. So from what I can tell, it's currently the only dumbbell cart on the market that checks all of those boxes. I looked around, I did Google searches, I tried to find as many dumbbell carts as I could. This was the only one that checked all those boxes. So for me, that makes it by far the best option, definitely for the Eisenlinks. Now, moving on to Ironmaster dumbbells. If you have Ironmasters, honestly, I would tell you the same thing. I think this is currently the best option out there that's available. It's going to function exactly the same for the Ironmaster dumbbells, changing the weights, having a place to store them, being able to roll it around and get it in position and, walk out cleanly. All that is going to be great for the Ironmasters, just like it is if you're using the Eisenlinks. The Eisenlink tall cart, this one, is currently listed as being on sale with a price of $259. Then there's also a $30 Amazon coupon available, which brings the price down to $229, which honestly I think is a great value if you have either Eisenlinks or Ironmasters. If you look at the other options, Ironmaster makes a cart that's $499, doesn't have a walk-in design, and while it does have an adjustable height, it starts at the lowest setting of 26 inches high, which is already an inch higher than this, and I think it goes up to 28 inches. So, I mean, and again, it's not a walk-in design, so you're going to be lifting the plates off like this, leaning forward, plates way out in front of your center of mass, and then having to like heave them up like this and get them off there. So definitely I think the Eisenlink tall cart at 25 inches is going to be a much better option, especially because of the walk-in design. And if you're much shorter and you're concerned about the height aspect, you could also just go with the short cart. But just be aware it only comes with 2 weight pegs versus 4 on this one. So you might run out of storage space for the plates, depending on how heavy your dumbbells go. Like if you have the expanded set, you have like all these extra plates, but you're trying to do like a set of lateral raises with like 20 pounds, then maybe you don't have enough space on one of these pegs to store all of those extra plates because you only have 1 peg. And then lastly, I'll just mention one more time, the trays are not long enough for the heaviest Ironmaster configurations because the 165-pound add-on brings the length of the dumbbells up to 23.5 inches, and this is only 21.5 inches. But they are long enough for the 120-pound Ironmasters, and you could go a little heavier than that before you ran out of room, just not all the way to 165. Although maybe with the heavy handle kit, I'm not sure. I'd have to, I don't have the Ironmasters here to measure exactly like how much you can fit on there, but there you go. I warned you. You can like do your own research if you're interested in that aspect. All right, next let's talk about Powerblocks. First of all, between these 2 carts, if you had Powerblocks, you're definitely going to be considering the short cart. Even though Powerblocks don't have a separate cradle, the unused plates basically act as a cradle that you need to clear when you walk out with the dumbbells. So a shorter cart is going to help with that, just like it does with the Reppins. Now, even though I've had the Reppins for over a year now, I actually still haven't gotten around to selling my old, very old, vintage 130-pound Pro aluminum Powerblocks. So I actually took them out of my spare bedroom where they've been sitting for a year, and I tested them with the short cart, and it actually worked great. If I had that set up when I was using the Powerblocks, I would have definitely enjoyed them much more and probably used them a lot more in my training compared to the old school Powerblock stand that I had for them that came with them, 30 years ago or whenever they were made. I don't have any issues getting the side pin in and out of the bottom holes, but there are many different models of Powerblocks out there. So if you find that the side rail is getting in the way with the heaviest weight increments, you can just remove that by taking off a couple screws. But generally, the stands that Powerblocks sell all seem to have a lip around the outer edge anyway, so I think you should probably be good with that. So still talking about Powerblocks, comparing to other options on the market, Rogue makes a Powerblock cart on wheels that is nearly $600 and closer to $700 with shipping. And it does boast a 1,000-pound capacity, but it doesn't even have a walk-in design. And I think, honestly, the price is insane for what it is. So that's my opinion on that. I would not recommend that at all. Powerblock has what they call their commercial Pro Max stand for $429. And that is rated for a 350-pound weight capacity, meaning you can use the commercial 175-pound Powerblocks on it. And that does have free shipping, so $429 is like the final price minus tax. But again, it's not a walk-in design. I would not personally recommend that. for that reason. The Eisenlink short stand is on sale right now for $199. The normal list price is, I think, $229. And for me, that along with the walk-in design and the ideal height makes it a far better option than either of the options I just mentioned. For the same price, Powerblock does have their Power Max 2.0 stand, which is a walk-in design, but it's only rated for 200 pounds. It doesn't have casters, and it's significantly taller. So again, I think I would definitely go with the Eisenlink stand over that. The only downside being that there wouldn't be any built-in storage for the Powerblock adder weights, which are, cylindrical chrome chunks of metal. So there's no great place to store that on the Eisenlink cart. They're not going to, you can't hang it on the weight pegs. That's not going to work. That's one thing that you might have to come up with your own solution for. Now, I have to admit, the decision gets a bit harder when you look at the Quickdraw version of Rep's rolling dumbbell stand. It has trays that are the same dimensions as the ones on the Eisenlink stands, so they should work fine for holding power blocks, even though Rep says that they don't guarantee compatibility with any other dumbbells, etc. But they're the right size. They're just flat. They have some sort of a foam or rubber mat on there that should, make it so your power blocks aren't getting scraped up by bolts or whatever that's underneath that. So they should work. And the price on that cart currently listed at $300, but there's that discount that may or may not even still be active for about $30. So, either $100 more or $71 more, something in that range. If you're willing to pay that extra, you get adjustable height from 18 to 21 inches, the ability to angle the trays in this type of a V configuration or have them parallel, which gives a little more space in between. The Rep cart, as we said before, has heavier duty construction, better fit and finish, etc. So I could definitely see someone going for that and using it with the power blocks. Personally, I don't think I would pay 50% more, $100 more for something that has the exact same functionality, even though it might be a little nicer build quality. I probably wouldn't pay that extra, especially when you consider that you're still going to have to come up with your own solution for storing those cylindrical adder weights. But at the same time, I could definitely see someone saying, you know what, I just want a little bit nicer build, heavier duty materials and everything. I'm just going to go with the Rep cart and pay the extra. I would totally understand that as well. The Eisenlink, I should also mention, again, does have the ability to install the trays slanted or tilted upwards, which for power blocks, that's how they design their stands, always going back to the dawn of power block history. And I think it is nice because it kind of helps you guide them in and out a little easier. So that might be another factor for people to consider. Okay, so we've talked about the Eisenlinks themselves. We've talked about Ironmasters. We've talked about power blocks. Now, how about everything else out there? Basically, dumbbells that have cradles. If you have one of the myriad types of adjustable dumbbells that uses a cradle to change the weights, then the short cart, I would say, is definitely what you want to be considering between these two. Unless, again, you're just extremely tall and you think that this 25-inch height is going to work better for you. But again, measure it yourself, make sure. I'll get specifically to the Reppin dumbbells in a minute, but if you have Nuobells, Snodes, Trulap, Bowflex, I think this would be a great option for any of those. And I know there's a lot of other similar types of dumbbells out there. There's those MX, whatever they are. I don't even know what they're called. Probably, a ton of others I haven't even heard of. But I think this would be great for anything that has a cradle where you want to be able to lift the dumbbells out with your arms straight and walk them out without worrying about banging into the cradle and the weights that are in the cradle. Now, the only one that I saw that does have their own option that looks decent is Trulap. They do now offer a rolling stand, but it looks like it only works with their specific dumbbell cradles. And it looks a little narrow, so I'm not sure if you can fully walk in to the point where, you know, you're picking the dumbbells up with your hands at your sides. It was hard to tell from the photos and the dimensions that they gave. It's also more expensive at $300, but the height of it is adjustable, so that might be a good option if you have the Trulaps and you're willing to spend the extra, you know, $100 on that to have like the branded Trulap stand that matches your dumbbells and has adjustable height. So if you're in that situation, you know, look that up and see what you think. But for any of these cradle dumbbells, at $200, I think the Eisenlink short stand is a great buy. And really even at $230, I think it's a great buy. Especially if your dumbbells are one of the ones that match up with the hole pattern on the trays. So you can screw the cradle down and have it be nice and solid and secure on there. Now, speaking of which, I couldn't find a specific list of which dumbbells these hole patterns actually match. But I did send a message to my contact at Eisenlink, and hopefully he'll get that back to me and I can either put it over the video while I'm editing it, or I'll add it in the description whenever I do get that information. So either way, again, there are the slots on the trays here, and you have the straps which can be used to hold down the cradle, whether or not the hole patterns line up. So that option is always there as well. So at last, we come to the question of whether I would recommend this cart for owners of the Rep x Pepin adjustable dumbbells. After having these dumbbells for over a year now, I do believe they're the best adjustable dumbbell on the market. And they also have a price tag to match for sure. So within that group of Reppin owners, there is naturally a good size segment that are really not limited by budget and simply want to have the best, most overbuilt, customizable, made in the USA by a small manufacturer product. If you fall into that category, then by all means, you should go buy the Black Widow cart. That is aimed squarely at your demographic. And it's a fantastic piece of equipment for sure. But the starting price with wheels is $635. And that's before shipping. Having it shipped to where I'm located in Michigan, the total comes to $740. And then it goes up from there if you want to customize the colors. Also, the stock cart that Black Widow has listed on their site is 24 inches tall with the wheels. So if you are going that route, I would, again, highly recommend figuring out what your ideal height is so that you can clear the cradles easily with your arms straight. And then make sure that you can get it customized to that exact height before you place your order. I've seen a few examples where Dean has done that for people. He's made the cart shorter because they had that concern. So I'm assuming it's not a problem, but I'm not sure whether that in itself would be an extra charge or not. It's not listed on the site, anything about customizing the height. So you have to reach out directly, and maybe it's an extra fee, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't think everything necessarily needs to be 11 gauge steel, 3x3, overbuilt. I don't need to throw my dumbbell cart down an elevator shaft and be able to drag it out and like set it back up and keep using it. It just needs to hold the dumbbells and let me wheel them around and get them where I want them without falling apart. And these are perfectly adequate for that purpose. So bottom line, things that are super heavy duty and overbuilt so that they feel rock solid are very nice, but I don't think they're necessary. And really, it's just that feeling that you're paying for at the end of the day. A piece of gym equipment really only needs to be strong enough to do the job it's intended for. Anything beyond that is just kind of a luxury. Very similar to higher end finishes, more refined, polished design elements. Those are all great things, and a lot of people are willing to pay for that. but just know that that's what you're paying for. Now, it's easy to dismiss build quality and finish differences when you're comparing to something that costs 3 times as much, but what about when the price gap is much narrower? So at the time of this recording, the Rep Fitness stand is currently listed at $300 on their website. I believe there is a sale going on, but I don't know how long that's going to last. I think it has like a percentage claimed thing on it, so that could be gone by the time I upload this video, for all I know. But I think currently you can still get it for $270 because it's a 10% discount code that they have. So let's say $270. And the Eisenlink short cart right here is on sale for $199. So the Rep cart is listed as being made of 11 gauge steel. And I did see it in person at Home Gym Con. And I have to say the fit and finish on the Rep rolling adjustable stand is definitely superior compared to the Eisenlink. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you in hopes of getting affiliate commissions, because I think it's clear to everybody that for the Reppins, especially specifically, the Rep rolling cart is clearly a better product in absolute terms. It has a more robust construction, a more polished and refined design. The height is adjustable, and since it's not meant for universal compatibility, the trays are smaller, and that keeps the entire unit more compact. If you look at this, you see how the trays stick out past the actual width of the cradle on both sides because it's intended for such a broad range of dumbbells. So with the Reppin cart, everything's a little bit smaller and more compact. With the Rep stand, you also have the option of mounting the trays parallel to each other if you want more space between the dumbbells to maneuver and pick them up. And finally, what may be the biggest factor, in my opinion, is it has built-in dedicated storage in a very convenient location for the adder weights, including theoretically the 1.25 pound adder weights that Rep has yet to announce or release. And again, the adder weight storage might be the biggest factor for me personally if I was deciding between the two, because for sure the toaster storage system on the Rep cart is no doubt better than just taking the adder weights and hanging them on the weight pegs of the Eisenlink cart. The adder weights are going to be more secure. You don't have to worry about them sliding around or falling off when you move the cart around. And they're in a more convenient position to just grab and take on and off the dumbbell for making quick weight changes. So I have to say that if you have the Reppins, it's really hard to recommend the Eisenlink short stand over the Rep stand, even with the price difference, just because of how purpose-built and streamlined and well-designed and heavy-duty and refined and polished and everything that the Rep cart is. Even with the current prices where depending on the sale and how long it continues, it's either a $71 difference or a $100 difference. Even if it's the Rep stand at $300 versus the Eisenlink on sale for $199. Personally, if it was me, I would still have to spend the extra $100 and go for the Rep stand if I was going to buy one or the other. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily think that you're wrong or stupid or anything like that if you decided to just save the money and go with the Eisenlink. The decision really hinges on how tight of a budget you're working with and what you might be able to do with that extra $100 you saved. That's personal choice. Depends on your situation. Hopefully I've gone into enough detail here to help you make an informed decision that's right for you. And lastly, I'll just throw in here that I honestly don't know much about the Rep Quickdraw dumbbells. When they first came out, I saw that they only go up to 60 pounds, and honestly, I just didn't pay much attention to them after that. But based on the cradle dimensions listed on their site, they should be compatible with the Eisenlink stands. I mean, the Rep Quickdraw version of their cart is the same tray dimensions as the Eisenlink, so it should work. So if you're deciding between those, again, it just comes down to how price conscious you are. The Rep stand is probably going to be better overall, but at $100 more, might not be worth it for you, particularly with the Quickdraws, where The dumbbells themselves are less than $600. So spending another $300 on the stand, that might be less palatable in that case, and you might want to save some money and go for the Eisenlink stand. And also because you don't have the issue of like having adder weights that you need to store. So you're not really giving anything up in that regard by going with the Eisenlink. And finally, what about me? Am I going to strap my DIY cart, use it for firewood, and switch over to the Eisenlink cart that I have right here? Well, no, I'm not. And that's primarily because, as I talked about at length in my previous video, I designed my DIY cart with very specific dimensions and as compact as possible so that it would fit into this, really tight space over here in my home gym. And specifically so that I would be able to like slide it in there and twist it and be able to still load plates onto my bar in this area when I'm deadlifting. And the Eisenlink cart, while I don't think it's like overly large or anything for what it is, it doesn't fit the same way into that area. And so it just doesn't work as well for me as the DIY cart that I already have. So it just doesn't work as well for me specifically in my very particular use case as the DIY cart that I already have. And for what it's worth, I'm pretty sure the Rep cart would not fit in that space either, based on the diagrams I've looked at and the measurements and everything. But I mean, that's a me problem, nothing wrong with the designs of either of those two carts. I think that most people that are looking for a rolling dumbbell cart are probably not going to have any problems with the size of either of them. The Rep cart is a little bit more compact. So if you're really tight on space, definitely look at the dimensions and measure your space before ordering anything. That's just good advice in general for gym equipment. But most people, if you're looking for a rolling dumbbell cart that you can move around and take here and there, then, you're probably going to have enough space for either of them. And that's not going to be the deciding factor. So anyway, I'll keep using my DIY cart because it works great. And specifically, it works great for me in my space. And that's where DIY equipment can really shine when it not only functions well, but also does something that commercially available options can't do. And on top of that, I would be lying if I said that I don't also have a sentimental attachment to it at this point. But all that being said, I'm not really recommending for most people to build their own cart versus buying. If you really want to make something that's fully customized to your unique needs, then yeah, have at it. But if you're just trying to save some money, the calculus is quite a bit different now compared to when I built mine at a time when the Black Widow cart was the only game in town. I was actually saving a lot of money by doing that at the time. But now that there's these cheaper options, it probably doesn't make as much sense. If you're a master woodworker with a well-equipped shop and you know what you're doing, you can probably slap together a much better version of my DIY cart in a couple of hours, whereas it took me like several days to make that. Somebody who really knows what they're doing could probably do it much faster. Maybe it does make sense for them, but for an average person like me with, decent DIY experience, but not a master craftsman, and you just have some tools in your garage, then there's a good chance the money you save probably isn't worth the time investment when it's all said and done. All right, that is all for this video. I hope it was helpful. Let me know what you think about the Eisenlink carts and how they stack up to the other options on the market. Leave all that down in the comments. I'm happy to discuss it with everyone. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you feel like doing me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in any of these, click the affiliate link in the description, or don't. Either way, that's not why I made the video.